sending your opponent into the bottom blast zone is one of the most satisfying ways of taking a stock in Smash. Brawl Marth has a grab-release down air on Metaknight, Melee Marth has the classic Ken combo, but today we're pulling back the curtain on Brawl's bizarre solution to all downwards knockback, and how it places edgeguarding in Brawl into such a unique placement in the broader Smash series. Now, you'll often hear people use the word spike when referring to the very simple act of hitting a character downwards, usually towards the bottom blast zone. For any game after Melee, however, this is very technically incorrect. In Melee, a spike was any attack that sent your opponent at a downward angle that was not between 260 and 280 degrees, as illustrated in the circle on screen. Now, the wiki suggests the phrasing spike might have come from a volleyball spike, as the motion is fairly similar, but the true origin is probably either lost to time or locked in some local Smash scene's deepest, darkest lore. The phrasing semi-spike is also used very loosely to describe attacks that send the opponent downwards at an angle that is closer to horizontal, since it's not exactly a spike, but it's also a generally difficult angle to recover from. Sheik's forward air in Melee being the poster child example of this, since that angle is absolutely disgusting. But in Melee, the game performs a check to see what the hitbox's launch angle is, and if it launches you at an angle within that little space between the 260 and 280 degrees, you would instead get what was dubbed a meteor smash. The meteor smash is different from a spike because, in Melee specifically, the game balances you being sent at such a dramatic angle by letting you jump or use up special out of a meteor smash within a very quick 8 frames of getting hit. Now, for the sake of consistency, this was changed on the PAL version, or the format not exclusively used in but most frequently found in European countries, which is also generally seen as an official patch of the game, but it made a lot of things less fun, and Mango Nation, USA, or whatever. Competitive Melee uses the NTSC version of the game. But famously, Marth's down air, Falco's down air, Falcon's nipple spike, etc., are all outside of that 20-degree window for a meteor smash, and therefore cannot be meteor canceled out of, leading to early stocks or absurd, unconventional combo strings. But in Brawl, they decided to take this mechanic, this meteor smash, and tweak it a little bit, presumably to give characters with downward hitboxes a little more of a ground floor to react to, and to also potentially avoid insane zero-to-death combos like the Ken combo that had basically become a household name in the Smash community. Their solution was to increase the angle from between 260 and 280 all the way up to an angle between 230 and 310, and the developers made sure that every single spike by a playable character in Brawl falls within this range of angles, meaning that spikes technically do not even exist amongst the playable characters at all in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Every single hitbox that sends you downwards is a meteor smash and therefore can be meteor cancelled. Just as an added little fun fact, because of this, as long as you're in tumble percent, or high enough percent that an attack will knock you onto the ground like this, getting hit by a meteor smash while standing on the stage in Brawl will reduce its knockback by 15% compared to 20% in Melee and 5% in Ultimate, but will bounce you up in the air. Before tumble percent, however, it will simply put you into hit stun like a sitting duck, potentially letting your opponent get some sort of follow-up. Now, when hit off stage, the whole Melee cancel the meteor smash in 8 frames thing was realistically pretty bizarre looking, and a little bit busted, not to mention the parameters weren't exactly clear to new players on what could or could not be meteor cancelled after they discovered it, so the developers decided to rework the whole system. With some exceptions, most characters in Brawl could meteor cancel after 25 frames of being launched downwards. Brawl runs at 60 frames per second, so this is only 5 frames off from being half a second. Long enough that a well-timed meteor smash horizontal to the stage would be basically impossible to recover from for most characters, but short enough that getting spiked from way above the stage at low to middle percents wouldn't forfeit your stock entirely. All things considered, a solid change for this new Brawl engine. But the Brawl developers decided to balance things just a little bit more with various characters in the cast to make things feel slightly more equal for everyone. Pit and Metaknight, of course, both having more jumps and therefore better recovery options, have to wait 32 frames, 7 more than the typical 25 before they're able to meteor cancel. Charizard, despite only having 1 more jump than the rest of the cast. A mid-air jump that basically makes him go nowhere, by the way. Has to wait 5 more frames, 30 total, in order to meteor cancel. Yoshi, whose up special is basically non-existent and has to rely on his double jump for verticality, has only 20 frames to wait. And then Ivysaur, Olimar, and Zero Suit Samus, the characters who are meant to primarily recover via a tether option of some sort, all only have to wait 15 frames of hit stun until they can meteor cancel. Which 10 frames less than everybody else doesn't seem like a whole lot, but this is a fourth of a second. Plenty of attacks with a meteor hitbox have close to or more than 15 frames of end lag, meaning given you're at a low enough percent to survive, you can meteor cancel off stage and tether to the ledge before your opponent's move is even properly done being performed. Finally, we have the tragic, horrible case of Wolf, who is an anomaly of a character in his own right and will be getting his own video sooner rather than later, but specifically Wolf has 60 frames of hit stun before he can meteor cancel. You can cancel your ENT appointment, I promise you, you heard that right. A full second of hit stun. That's a lot of time. If a standard attack takes longer than 15 frames to come out, it's considered fairly slow. Hero's back aerial and ultimate comes out on frame 18, and it feels like you can read Juna's entire poetry book to gain 5 points of courage before the first hitbox even comes out. And we're talking roughly 3 times that just to attempt to recover. If you're curious as to why this is almost definitely because Wolf was such a late inclusion in the game. Only one of a few characters that almost got cut for the final version. See, the fighting alloys all have 60 frames of hit stun before they can meteor cancel, so a theory is that 60 frames might be the default amount. And since they were so rushed to get Wolf into a functional state before launch, they might have simply forgotten to check the modifier. Seems to be something that could pretty easily fall underneath the radar. But this isn't actually quite as bad as I made it seem. You see, it's 100% true that Wolf has to wait 60 frames, a full second, in order to meteor cancel. But if you go back to the footage that I just showed you, get real nitty and gritty with it and count each individual frame one by one, you'd notice that he starts his recovery after 41 frames, not 60. So, Scunch, did you lie to us? Yes, well, kind of. You see, you can only meteor cancel during hit stun, or the time after you get hit and before you're allowed to move again. This means that although Wolf's meteor cancel window starts after 60 frames, a lot of the time he can still act before that, because most downward sending attacks at early and maybe middle percents don't have more than 60 frames of hit stun. Now, don't misunderstand the predicament that Wolf is still in because of this, because although this does mean he doesn't have to wait the full 60 frames every single time, it does mean that effectively he cannot meteor cancel. Because, like I said, if you're at a high enough percent that a meteor smash will put you in over 60 frames of hit stun, where Wolf would then only afterwards be able to meteor cancel, you're already dead. Especially when a lot of other characters that can cancel out of hit stun or meteor cancel early, like the tether characters, will almost certainly survive these situations. So although it's not a full 60 frames every single time, and will more so be around the 40-45 frame mark with hit stun, that is still a massive disadvantage for Wolf, and is significantly longer than almost every other meteor cancel in the entire game. Speaking of recoveries in general, it's a lot easier to recover with characters in Brawl than it was in Melee. In Melee, almost every character required laser precision to grab ledge properly, but Brawl had a much more generous magnet hand system. Not as generous as Smaforce and Ultimate, but a little better than Melee. Now, don't get me wrong, you still had to be careful and unpredictable with your recoveries, but a lot of the new additions to the game, namely Sonic, Pit, Diddy Kong. No, not you. I will talk about you in a second. You back off and wait your turn, asshole. You've seen me mention Lucas's crazy recovery options. King DDD had a surprisingly technical up special with a small, generally safe window between canceling your momentum and grabbing ledge. And Snake has a pseudo-infinite recovery that's so good it spawned an entirely community-created minigame called Duelist Pro. Point being, if you're off stage in Brawl, it's easier to get back onto stage. But tethers in Brawl are fairly weak, besides Olimar's, and are predictable and easy to edgeguard. You've heard me talk about Ivysaur's tether, which is especially awful. For the most part, recoveries are easier and more intuitive. There are some nerfs with returning characters, like Samus's tether no longer attaching to the stage itself, but all things considered, characters that aren't super heavies that are predestined to basically just go die when off stage have a decently balanced advantage and disadvantage state. But even while sitting in my little chair typing this little script, I had a thought. Maybe I'm biased. I go back and watch old sets and people were really good at conditioning and edgeguarding. Then it hit me. The whole Wolf 60 frames thing is what inspired me to do this video, but now sitting here thinking and typing about recoveries, the true antagonist, the twist villain of this story is the same as it has always been: Metaknight. Now, here's a hypothetical, right? You're playing Marth. You have a massive forward aerial, some would call it the fly swatter because you could just swing it around and whack people out of the air. Congrats, you have Metaknight off stage. Now, take a second to establish a game plan. Okay, that's enough time. Now, did you decide to go low and cover ledge? Ooh, tough break, buddy. Metaknight has way too many mid-air jumps, so he can just stall you out and wait. When Metaknight is off stage, you're on his time, and his frame data is absolutely better than yours. Even if he goes low, he has Drill Rush to cover the ledge with a hitbox, or throw off your timing. His up B shuttle loop is fast as lightning and covers a ton of vertical space in an instant with a strong hitbox that will kill you if you're not careful. If you decide to take the problem head on and try to fly swatter him out of the air, he can just dimensional cape straight through you to get to safety. And surely you didn't forget that he can air dodge an infinite amount of times in the air, right? If you approach, he'll almost always use a perfectly safe defensive option, meaning you have to do the brunt end of the work and really condition your opponent hard in an attempt to get an opening. And if you let him back to the stage, well, let's just say ledge grab limits were implemented for a reason. Metaknight has this bizarre phenomenon of sometimes making you feel like you're in disadvantage while you're sitting pretty center stage. And all of this is assuming that Metaknight doesn't choose to just NATO, which is basically that's right, it goes into the square hole, offstage mix-up to basically every situation. He's also one of just 3 characters with the glide mechanic, featuring a glide attack with an incredible knockback scaling that instantly auto-cancels once you touch the ground. Oh, did I mention that including shuttle loop, you can glide twice and use the glide attack twice? When it comes to edge guarding against Metaknight, you just can't. Or at least the risk-reward struggles to fit the bill. The correct answer to this little hypothetical, unless you have confidence that you can condition your opponent well and make use of their mistakes, is to just sit on stage and wait. And there's discipline in that. You might just need to look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm not going to follow you off stage, Metaknight. Now, for the record, of course there's counterplay to Metaknight, unless you're also Metaknight, in which case everything gets thrown out the window. So my big conclusion here is that in competitive play, well, Brawl edge guarding kinda sucks. In Sakurai's defense, making every spike into a meteor smash was, in my opinion, definitely on the side with the greener grass in terms of changes from Melee to Brawl, but because of better recoveries, the Brawl engine, footstool, Metaknight, and the new meteor cancel system, edgeguarding is just, well, weird. Brawl absolutely bridges the gap between Melee and Smoforge in terms of recoveries. Characters have better recoveries in general, which makes the edgeguarding slightly less flowcharty in nature, a fact that many Melee players might not like as much, although most recoveries still have clear counterplay. All these new mechanics really do make sense for the new engine, and not you. This significantly improves the quality of life and game feel in the best way possible, a way that most casual players wouldn't even notice. This is unrelated to the rest of the video, but my buddy, who helped me record most of the footage for this video, made a game with his friends called The Old Gentleman on Steam. It's short, it's atmospheric, and it's fun. You should go buy the game. No, this is not a sponsorship. I just like to see my friends succeed. Back to the video. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my Patreon if you'd like to directly support me, and like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the content. And like always, there's more coming soon. See ya!